Human beings are social creatures. We are surrounded by other people. So, what happens when social interactions and other people become dangerous or scary? In today's video, we're going to be talking about a model for understanding social anxiety. Hi everyone. In today's video, we're going to be talking about a model for understanding what goes on and how social anxiety works and some of the factors that really drive social anxiety. But before I get into that, just a couple of disclaimers to go over. I'm a registered psychologist in the province of British Columbia, Canada, and this video is for informational purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute or replacement for advice from your doctor or mental health professional. Now, with those things out of the way, let's start talking about social anxiety. Now, this is a sort of part 2 of a mini video series that I'm doing talking about social anxiety. And the previous video, I talked about where social anxiety comes from, some of the factors that can contribute to setting a person up to develop social anxiety. And there are sort of two main factors. The first is kind of this innate physiological sensitivity. The person has a more reactive nervous system and they tend to have stronger responses, stronger physiological responses to unfamiliar people. The second factor that can contribute to a person developing social anxiety are early social experiences. Things like negative school experiences, bullying, teasing, criticism from teachers or parents. So a person can have either one or both of these predisposing factors, and what they do is they lead the person to develop negative beliefs about themselves. Things like, I'm not good enough, I'm unlovable, I'm incompetent, and it can lead a person to develop negative beliefs about other people. So other people are critical, they're rejecting, they're judgmental, they'll notice even small signs of anxiety or nervousness. So these beliefs then form the foundation that social anxiety is built on, because these beliefs can lead a person to develop negative expectations and predictions of what's going to happen in social interactions. And so going into social interaction, these expectations can lead to high levels of what I call anticipatory anxiety, or that anxiety that happens even before the situation. So even before I go to that party, I anticipate all of the negative things that are going to happen, and I feel really anxious in the week leading up to that party. And so I develop this anxiety based on a variety of predictions that I have about how it's going to go. So things like, maybe I won't behave appropriately at the party. Maybe I'll come off looking anxious or awkward or odd to other people. Maybe other people are going to respond negatively to me. They're going to have a bunch of really kind of awkward or uncomfortable interactions. So I go into the party thinking about all of these things that are likely to happen. Those are my predictions, even just going into the party. So if I'm predicting all of those negative things that are potential to happen, it's natural for me to want to do some things to try and prevent those bad things from happening. And so we call these safety behaviors. That I'll engage in safety behaviors that are aimed at preventing the feared outcome from happening. So these safety behaviors are sort of twofold. So they prevent the negative thing from happening, but they're also aimed at reducing my anxiety because I'm hopefully preventing the negative thing that's going to happen. Now, the thing about these safety behaviors is that they're not always in my conscious awareness that sometimes these safety behaviors can be automatic and that we're not even aware that we're doing them. So they can be kind of sneaky that way. So what are some examples of these safety behaviors? Well, the most common and the most obvious is avoiding social situations. So if I avoid social situations, then I'm not going to have those awkward interactions, and that people aren't going to judge me if I don't put myself in those situations. Things like avoiding eye contact. So if I'm at the bus stop and there's other people around, I'll pull out my phone and pretend like there's something really engaging on my phone that I'm looking at in order to avoid eye contact with other people, because that might lead to striking up conversation. And what if that leads to something awkward? You know what? I'll just avoid eye contact, focus on something else so that other people don't get a sense that I want to talk. Other examples of safety behaviors are things like trying to blend in. So if I'm at a party, I'll sort of be on kind of the periphery of a group. I'll do lots of smiling, lots of nodding, agreeing with everything that's said. Try not to stand out. Try to kind of blend in with the crowd and not draw too much attention to me. Another thing I might do is try not to talk in social situations. So limit how much I say. So ask the person lots of questions to keep them talking about themselves so I don't have to say very much about myself. Now, alternatively, what can also happen is that people can sometimes engage in safety behaviors that involve talking so much and ensuring that the conversation keeps going so that there aren't any uncomfortable pauses. So I'm filling all the time and just talking because I don't want the conversation to have a pause and the both of us just staring at each other with nothing to say. So I'll fill that space. I'll fill those, even those little pauses with talking to keep the conversation going. So what can happen is these safety behaviors then lead to a response from the other person. So social interactions are transactional. So the way we're interacting with the other person is going to lead to them to interact with us in a certain way. So how I engage with the person, how I behave towards the person is going to exert an interpersonal pull on their part. So it's going to pull them to behave in a certain way. So if you think about, if I'm engaging in these safety behaviors during this interaction at this party, think about the message that some of these safety behaviors may be sending to the other person. How might the other person interpret these safety behaviors? So if I'm not saying very much, or if I'm not making eye contact, how might the other person interpret that? Well, maybe they interpret it that I'm not interested in them, or that I've got nothing to say, or I'm not really interested in this conversation. If I'm talking too much, they may interpret it as me being overbearing. So notice I'm doing these safety behaviors because I'm anxious, and I'm doing these safety behaviors to prevent bad things from happening. But what ends up happening from these safety behaviors is they almost cause the feared reaction that I'm worried about happening. Now, one of the things that can happen in social anxiety is that people become so focused on their own anxiety in social situations that they're not really aware of, or they don't even recognize how the other person's responding. So it's almost like I've got this magnifying glass that's examining what's going on inside of me, and I'm so caught up in noticing what's happening inside of me and how I'm coming across and what I'm saying, and if I'm stumbling over my words, my focus is so much on me that I'm not paying attention to the other person. And so this can give the other person a message that I'm self-preoccupied, or that I'm not interested in them, or that I want them to go away, which isn't the point. That's not the message I want to give the other person, but it's the message that's coming across because I'm so caught up in my anxiety in the situation. And so the other person picks up on these messages and responds by, ending the conversation or walking away. And so then I sort of see that the conversation ended. Maybe I liked the other person. Maybe I wanted to have a conversation with the other person, but I was just so anxious. I engaged in these safety behaviors. The other person stopped the conversation and left. And so now I'm left wondering, what happened? And so this can result in self-judgments about that interaction and what happened. So I might interpret the other person's reaction as confirming all of those negative predictions that I had going into the interaction. So these self-judgments are also driven by my safety behaviors in the interaction. So remember, I said that the safety behaviors tend to focus the attention on myself, how anxious I am, all of the things that aren't going well, that little bead of sweat that's forming on the corner of my head. So I'm so preoccupied in everything that's going on with me and all the anxiety and the turmoil that's going on with me that I'm not noticing any of the positives that might be occurring in this social interaction. Things like the person nodding and smiling at me, the things like the person asking me questions and making eye contact with me. I'm not noticing all of these positive behaviors and positive signs that the other person's giving me in the social interaction because all I'm really focused on is what's going on inside of me and the anxiety that's going on inside of me. And that has an effect on my judgment of how that social interaction went. Now, in social anxiety, it's not uncommon for people to do what I call a post-mortem after the social interaction. So they review the social interaction and think about what happened. And the tendency of this post-mortem tends to focus on everything that went wrong because that's what I was paying attention to. That's what I was processing in the interaction. I was processing how anxious I felt, how nervous I was, the times that I stumbled over my words, when I noticed the other person sort of look away. I focus on all of those things. And those are all the things I remember because that's what I was paying attention to in the interaction. And I have no recall then of any of the positives that occurred in that interaction. So I have no recall of the person telling me, wow, that's really interesting. Can you tell me more? I don't really remember that. So this post-mortem is really just a review of everything that I perceived went wrong in the interaction. And that makes the interaction come across, or I remember the interaction as far more negative than it actually was. And so then this experience serves as evidence that feeds back into my negative beliefs about myself and about how other people are likely to view me. And so the cycle begins again. And the next social interaction I now have even more negative expectations and feared outcomes because that's what happened the last time I went to the party. And that's what seems to happen every time I go to a party. So it becomes this self-fueling cycle that when we're dealing with social anxiety and we're working on treating social anxiety, we look for opportunities in this cycle to try and break or interrupt what's going on in the cycle. And that's what I'll be talking about in future videos, ways to address and ways to manage social anxiety that target specific parts of this cycle. And I'll give you a hint, the key is those safety behaviors. because those safety behaviors are things that a person's doing to try and make themselves feel safer, but are actually some of the things that are making the social interactions uncomfortable and are actually driving a lot of the anxiety that a person experiences in these social interactions. So I'll be talking about that more in a future video. So that's a model of social anxiety. I'd love to hear your thoughts, ideas, or questions about this, so please leave me some comments in the comments section down below. If you're enjoying my videos and would like to see more, please hit that subscribe button and notification bell, and you'll be alerted every week when I post a new video. So that's all for today's video. As always, thank you for making it all the way to the end of this video, and I will see you in the next one.